Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Camp YA and our online stream. We hope you're having an amazing weekend from wherever you are joining us in the world. We are really all over an International Operations Day, which is very, very exciting. Do make sure if you tag us in any social posts, we are literally Camp YA Fest on every single platform now or could be created in the next month, because I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot more coming soon. And we are hashtag Camp YA 2023. Over the next 45 minutes, roughly, we're going to take you on a publishing journey of chaos and abandoned, magical and mystery intrigue, with some of my favourite people in publishing who have all had very different but very exciting journeys, which is going to have led them to the highlight of their career, which is obviously talking to me today for Camp YA. Thank you. I have paid them to nod at every compliment and thing. So we're joining me
We've been
today.
compensated handsomely.
Handsomely is putting it to a stretch, but I'll take it. Joining me today is the creator of Chaos, the NYT bestselling author of the Atlas series, One for My Enemy, and very soon to be Masters of Death, Olivie Blake. We also have the man with the smoothest audio narration voice in the business, author of Legends and Lattes, and soon to be Bookshops and Bone Dust. That's such a tongue twister, I really can't say it more than that. Which people don't have this yet, which is very
Hugo
exciting for me.
nominated. Hugo
Hugo, not
nominated.
literally Hugo nominated. We are in the presence of greatness.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
And the man who is literally building a publishing empire in every venture he can. He's doing books, he's doing TV and film, he's doing merchandise. We have the author of Combat Codes and the forthcoming Grievous Blood, Alexander Darwin. Metaphysical round of applause for everyone. So we're going to start and we're going to take you on a journey of life. This is all of your lives. And we're going to ask the age-old question, what came first, the author or the writing? So let's go exact. That is a question everyone asks. It's in the literature. It was in the hieroglyphics in Egypt. Just check it, look it up. Gosh.
Okay.
So we're going to take you back to when you first started reading, started writing. Like, what came first for you? Were you really big readers? Did you kind of fall into the writing side a bit more? Were you otherwise creative when you guys were growing up? Who would like to start? I will nominate people.
Yeah, no,
Olivie,
it's
Olivie,
yeah, I'm
ladies
talking.
first.
I'm already talking. Yeah. No, I was a really big reader. I feel like I talk all the time about how writing is something I actively try not to do. I'm the daughter of an immigrant, and I think the idea of wanting to go into a career in the arts was like very like the worst thing I could possibly do. Like I could maybe like, start a murderous cult, become an artist, like those were at the bottom of the list. But when I was a kid, I was really into writing stories. I am a very troublingly imaginative person. I won an award for my library, which I like to think about a lot because it was me up against these two like sword porn boys. And I won, and I was feeling really excited about that, even though my book was like pretty much a knockoff of Tamara Pierce. But it's fine. But yeah, no, I just a really big reader. I just sort of kept falling back into writing. Like it kept being the thing that I would do whenever the rest of my life was going sideways, and I didn't know that it was something I could really do like actually for money. I was writing fan fiction, and my fan fiction was doing sort of well. I had like a little bit of fanfic micro fame. But what was significant about it was that people would say things like, "You have a gift," like you've put things into words that I had been waiting to be able to express. And I was like, you know what, that feels more profound than the commercial real estate that I'm doing. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna like just go for it. I'm just gonna go all in. Kind of gave myself like a deadline that was like, while the last vestiges of youth are still here, I'll do something irresponsible, which is try to be a writer. And it like worked out just in time.
You have a
I
gift, though.
almost had to get a real job.
Travis?
All right, I'll go. I grew up reading a lot. I was a huge reader. Lots of fantasy, lots of sci-fi. And I think when I was in high school, after reading The Wheel of Time, I decided that I wanted to be a writer. And so I wrote maybe the first 100 pages of probably the worst fantasy novel that has ever been written, which a friend of mine helpfully kept and gave to me a few years ago, and I burned. It was really, really awful. It was,
Like ritualistically,
I
like
think I had
staging it.
at least 10% of it was the glossary. I wrote that first. So that tells you what end I came at this
That's
from.
very Wheel of Time though. Like that's in the
Truly terrible.
spirit.
So I completely forgot about writing. I was like, I'm never going to do this. And I went and briefly went to college and dropped out. And then I made video games for decades. I was pretty good at that. And at some point, I got tired of that because I uh, I interacted with people who play games for too much time, maybe. And I don't know, 20 years is a long time to do anything. And I started narrating audiobooks because it was kind of book adjacent because I still really love reading. And I had brief stints where I joined critters.org and I wrote a bunch of shorts and did the process where you can have other people critique and you do critiques yourself. And I enjoyed it, but it never really went further than that. And I tried to do National Novel Writing Month a lot of times and failed all of them. I would get to like the
Wait,
Boggy Medal and I would drop out.
can I just ask a
Uh,
really stupid question? Is it supposed to sound like I don't want to write anymore? Like that's what NaNoWriMo sounds like to me. Is like no more.
no,
You
no, right,
know, like
more.
is that what it's supposed to be? I thought that was on purpose. I just wanted to ask.
I don't think so. I hope not. I hope not. It would be
No.
really, really bad marketing.
That's absolutely how I hear it in my head whenever I see it. And I just saw you posting about how you had written Legends and Lattes during NaNoWriMo, and I think about it in my head as NaNoWriMo.
Well, it
Just
might
like
as well have
I'm
been
not
Starbucks
the
going to be able to
description
marketing.
unhear
of
that now.
it might as well have been the description of how I felt after all of the previous attempts
Okay.
at doing it. Was like, I'm not
Right.
going to do
Sorry.
this anymore. This
Continue.
was terrible.
Okay.
Um, and then Legends and Lattes is the first national novel writing book that I actually completed, and I had no expectations for it. And so I sort of, after deciding I was never going to do it, accidentally backed into writing.
Alex?
Yeah, I remember when I was in like second or third grade, I had one older brother, and I would go into his room when he wasn't there and steal some of his Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance books because they looked really interesting to him, and bring him to school. And like I would take bathroom. I just have a very vivid memory of taking bathroom breaks and like bringing them to the bathroom and reading them in like the dim light of the bathroom. So a typical story. And actually, R.A. Salvatore, who writes like the Drizzt novels obviously he's been writing them for a long time in the Forgotten Realms universe. I read them, but I feel like at that age you don't really realize authors are people. Like you just read the books and then you don't think about the authors. Maybe you see their picture, but it just doesn't go into your head. So it wasn't until I think I was like in high school because R.A. Salvatore turned out to be a local author in Boston, and I saw like his picture on the Boston Globe on my parents' like dining room table, and it like clicked a light bulb in my head. Like, wait, there's actually a person that's doing this. They're in the paper that my parents read. That's like a serious thing, like with people in it. And obviously, it was a long time until I self-published Combat Codes. Had written a lot of like fan fiction throughout, but more just for myself. So it wasn't that didn't come back to me until I thought, hey, why don't I give this a shot?
I want to talk
For
about
what
fan
fandom?
fiction. Yeah.
Hey, I wanna know what fandom.
You want to dig deep
For
into
what
this.
fandoms? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance, those and also actually related to what Travis does, and I know Travis is sick of video game people, so I'm sorry, but I played a lot of like Final Fantasy and like Chrono Trigger and games like that, and that form of storytelling I think heavily influenced me. Like just again watching my brother play, I wouldn't care about like leveling up the characters. I would just like listen to the story, and that was definitely a big part of it. So I would also write Olivia in that fandom as well, like video game RPGs.
But like obviously those worlds are really established, and the worlds like Oliver you were writing are already really established. Or how does it feel taking something that you know is so like popularized and then taking it into your own? Like what was the process behind those like adventures in fanfic writing?
Yeah, it was this weird process of like, so I was getting the only attention and validation I was getting was via fanfic. So for a while it was like I'm only going to think about things in terms of how do I fit it into these characters, and like basically this thing that I want to write about, how do I make this idea work in a version of
Mm.
this world? So I did write a lot of AUs. I did a lot of like world building in fan fiction that was like, how can I make it so that these characters would turn out a different way, that I can make these other things happen. I wrote like I did a multiverse like fanfic. Like I did a lot of stuff that people were like, please stop doing this. Like this isn't what we want. Like we just want to watch we want to watch these two characters like kiss, and you're talking about ethics. Like please move this somewhere else. And so that was when I realized, like, oh, I've got to start, like, I have to start thinking about when a character enters my brain, instead of my first thought being, could this be within this, like, cast that I always use? And start thinking, maybe this is someone else. Like, maybe this voice that has occurred to me belongs to something that I have yet to build, which was kind of like an attitude shift. Like, I do get a lot of questions from people who are fan fiction writers who are like, how do I start writing original stuff? Answer is that at some point a character will talk to you and it's not one of the ones on your list, and then you're like, well, gotta build a world for them. Gotta build a
Because his
little
fanfic
cave.
is like fanfic
Teach
is
them
super
in
into there. Like they want people want A to kiss B from their like tropes, and then they're like, that's what I want that, but like 20 different ways in the same book, and that's what I really want.
fiction has really influenced publishing in a lot of ways, and I think one of those things is like the sort of boiling down to these essential tropes, and just even the literacy with understanding what a trope is and how to identify a trope. A lot of that comes from fan fiction. But certainly in fan fiction, people want something. It's its own medium, and it's designed to have a sort of safe reading expectation. Like I think that fan fiction is also really like ahead of the game in terms of identifying trigger warnings and like tagging and stuff like that, to make the environment as readers we know what they're getting into. And I didn't want to provide any safety, and people were like, stop.
But like obviously, Alex, you were writing from books that like you quite like revered. Like these are your like favorite books growing up. Did you ever feel like a pressure or like a reverence when you were writing, or was it just like you were having complete fun being in this world that you already kind of were familiar with?
Well, so for me, I didn't. My fan fiction was not published, so I was just really. This was really just me writing
Just
to myself. I would share it with friends, and did not receive good feedback just because they weren't really into. Not, I mean, the writing was probably terrible, but also they weren't into
They're
it.
like,
I have
stop
this
giving us this.
have this one friend who like pretty much bullied me, not in a bad way. Well, yeah, in a bad way. For writing fan
Positive
fiction,
bullying.
but then like many years later, we became friends, and he like really went down the rabbit hole of like all these same books, and like we had this like heart to heart. He was like, "Sorry, I really love these books," and I was like, "Well, see what happens."
Well, I'm now going to read from your fan fiction that we can all judge together. Uh, um,
That is the only thing that's appropriate now.
that's what can only happen. I mean,
We just need
I,
a
I
session of
wrote
this where
something for my
everybody
friend.
takes their junior fiction, and I will just
Yes,
read it out loud
yeah.
as a very serious audiobook narration, and we'll record it.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, just
that's
Yeah.
actually.
yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Actually,
I,
Travis,
You,
I think I would have an incredible time doing
let's
that. So
start
if you
that
want to give me
podcast.
your teen
Yeah.
fan fiction, if you
Let's do
happen to
it.
have it laying
I'm
around.
sending it.
Okay.
I'm sending it
All
your
right.
way, man.
will you
Yeah.
take
No,
nonfiction as
we're
well?
gonna do that. It's gonna be nonfiction.
I wrote an
Only if we get
autobiography
to
when I
do it
was
in a weird
5.
voice.
Oh, biography. You wrote a
It was
memoir.
it was a school project, and we had like it's called My Autobiography. The text is like at this angle because I couldn't write in straight lines, and it's just pictures of me being like, I like church and I do this, and I'm like,
Oh.
I also wrote a Mills and Boon book for my friend, but she didn't appreciate it and asked me to stop. But that's a different story. Obviously, Travis, you worked in gaming, which is in a similar sort of way, like writing fanfic, because you're creating worlds and you're developing worlds that people are either familiar with or will become familiar with. What was that like as a process for you when you were kind of in that sort of sphere?
So the weird thing is that in gaming, I'm an engineer, so I coded and designed and I did art,
And
and
Forgotten
I didn't
Heroes.
write anything for games until the last game that I made, which I wrote a lot for. Um, But I was always the person, we were sitting in a meeting and somebody would be like writing this long-winded dialogue to give you a quest, and I'd be like, no, we got to cut this in half. We need like 50% less lore here. So I was always very much on the side of like economy and getting it to what the player was actually engaged in doing. So I'm a terrible example. Uh, and I never actually wrote fan fiction, although uh, in some ways
Bad.
Legends and Lattes kind of is, because
Mm.
it's basically, you mentioned the Forgotten Realms. The pitch to myself when writing Legends of Lattes was I want a Hallmark movie set in the Forgotten Realms, because the Forgotten Realms is just like, for me, in a lot of ways, it sort of has calcified this idea of just kind of this European fantasy world that I think a lot of people immediately recognize. And I was like, I just want to do something that is recognizable, that is like easy to get into, and that's effectively what I recognize. So it's not explicitly the Forgotten Realms, but it's a lot of the same touchstones and a lot of the same vibes, since it's pretty much just vibes anyway.
Yeah,
That's
it's
very
like a
interesting
genius
response.
read of the zeitgeist, though. I really think Legends and Lattes is brilliant because of what it captured at exactly the right time. Like that energy of just like that exact mashup of things that was just like a totally unattended to appetite, you know? I think it's brilliant. Anyway,
I
sorry.
really wish I could claim any like actual foresight in doing that, but it really was just, I think, timing, because you've got things like Critical Role going on, stuff like Arcane coming out on Netflix, everybody trapped in their houses and only consuming these things for 2 years, and everybody wanting to have like watching the Great British Bake Off like pretty much nonstop. So like all
Yes.
of these things happened that I had nothing to do with. I just happened to be responding them and accidentally in the same way that other people eventually did.
This is the benefit of self-publishing because you wrote this, what, November 21, and it came
Yeah,
out 2 months later. And with the
February of
Atlas 6,
22. Yeah,
it was
which is
the same
fast.
thing that, yeah, like I managed to beat a trend to the punch because it was like I'm just going to self-publish this, and it
Hmm.
ended up feel like it looked to the world like I had predicted something, but really I just got to the market much faster
Yeah,
than everybody else.
a bunch of
Which
people
is an
having the same
interesting,
ideas at the same time.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's
it's
just
a really
accidental speed.
interesting, yeah.
And if
So you
we'd
wrote
all
it from
done
like,
trad, who knows what would have happened if those original books, I mean, were just manuscripts that were originally submitted to agents. Who know if we would have even
Yeah.
made it.
I mean, I
Yeah.
still, if I could go back in time, would do the exact same thing. I would not have like written it and been like, oh, I think I'm going to put this in submission for a year. I would have just been like, no, I just want to throw it out and see what happens. And I would, if I ever had to go, if I ever had to actually make an ask to get something published again, I would still go back to just, yeah, I'm just going to self-pub this and see what happens.
Well, I mean, but I think that's like part of the same thing with the Atlas 6. So I was querying things, like other things that I felt would fit the market. Like My Mechanical Romance, my Y romance was like this feels marketable. And then the Atlas 6 was like, I don't know how to explain what this is. Like
Hmm.
it sounds derivative in a pitch, but the way it's executed is so character driven. It's so like the way that it's been written is what makes it different, but I didn't think, and I still don't think an agent would have paid attention to it. Like I don't think I could have put into words in a query letter why this is different, and I think a lot of people would have passed. And I think that it was, it's probably, it had to, like, you couldn't prove that Legends and Lattes would sell until
No,
it sold. And same
because
with
it
the
sounds
Atlas 6. You
ridiculous.
exactly. It's just like you can't prove that that book is going to be successful because there aren't 5 years of successful copies preceding it, which is one of the pitfalls of traditional publishing.
Hmm.
did you write your books differently? If you were querying My Mechanical Romance, like, I, if you were
Yeah, you
querying that,
got
but
it.
you wrote, I never tell. I always say it both ways. They always interchangeably. If you were querying that, but like you wrote Alice almost for you and like your group of like people that you knew would respond to that, did you write the books or approach the books differently when you were constructing them?
Yeah. So that was particularly. So I wrote the Atlas 6, Alone with You in the Ether, and then no wait, Alone with You in the Ether, the Atlas 6, and then My Mechanical Romance. And so I queried Alone with You in the Ether. I did not query the Atlas 6, and Alone with You in the Ether didn't go anywhere at the time. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna write for someone that I think needs this book that it's not there for. So I was like, I was putting myself in the mindset of writing this book for the 17-year-old version of me who didn't have characters of color in a romance, who didn't have something telling them that they could be motivated toward science. There was a lot. I was like talking to my inner child when I was working on that, and I was definitely doing it in the set. Like, there was no way I would have self-published My Mechanical Romance, because there's not an appetite for self-published YA. Like, the YA self-published works, you come across them pretty much digitally. Like, they people came across them via social media, which is hard to do if your target audience is 15. So that was definitely a very different like mindset, but every book is kind of a different mindset. Like, who is this book for is always a slightly different project. Really.
Well, Alex, obviously you decided to self-publish the whole trilogy. And you were a big D&D player like back in the day. Like, how did all of that kind of stem into you approaching your book and then just deciding to self-publish?
So I attribute it more to, I don't want to say stupidity on my part, but a lack of awareness, which tends to be a trend with me. Where I was working in like Silicon Valley, and I had a startup, and it just crashed and burned. And I was in that world at that time when there was lots of like Web 2.0 type of stuff. And so I just came upon KDP and thought it was a really cool tool. And I had no awareness whatsoever that there was even a process. Again, like obviously there was, like, how did R.A. Salvatore get published? I didn't know about agents or editors, or it was in the back. It was in the background there. Right. We're in it, so we know it.
Book in like 2 stages.
Right. So I just thought, oh wait, you can like print on demand. There's all these tools out there that you can use, and I just thought it was a cool testing ground. And I had been writing this manuscript simultaneously, and so I thought, hey, let's just go for it. So it wasn't until later that I really found out that traditional publishing was a thing.
And obviously, Travis, you said you wrote for NaNoWriMo. What was that process like for you? Because it seems like it was a lot of fun.
Well, every previous time I tried it was terrible.
How many times have you done it before?
I think I tried it at least 5 times. And I would always, one time I managed to finish a novella, which was also awful.
Hey, that counts.
But it doesn't count because I didn't pass the 50K word. So it was not a win.
This was
the first time it was well. Well, I thought I was a pantser. I thought, for anybody who doesn't know what a pantser is, a pantser doesn't outline. They're just like feels it and goes. And I want desperately to be a pantser, and I'm not. And I'm so upset about it.
Lucky you!
I feel like every pantser wants to be a planner, and every planner wants to be a pantser.
Wants to be a pantser.
No, Travis, I have to tell you, I'm in the middle of drafting right now. I just crossed 100,000 words. I don't know what the hell's happening in this book. I don't know. 100,000.
That's terrifying.
Words,
okay, so
I'm trying to outline.
I'll take that under advisement because that sounds terrifying. So this is the first one that I outlined, and it's the first thing I did that was really simple. I always wanted to do like some big crazy. Oh, it's got to be the freaking great American novel, and it's got to have all these. It's got to be important. It's got to be really, really great. And for this one, I was just like, no, it's just going to be an orc opening a coffee shop. Ha ha. And
you got nominated orc.
I know, and it ended up being more serious than I thought it was. Like it did not change from my outline. Like my outline is the book.
That's one sentence. It can't go far,
If you took the draft I completed at the end of National Novel Writing Month, and you took the final edited copy, you'd notice that it's like a little bit cleaner, but it's still the same book. So I didn't really change anything, which was nice because I hate redoing things too, which is probably another thing for being a plotter.
I'm like 200,000 words and like having to cut like 100,000.
I took 2,000 out and put 2,000 back.
It's crazy.
My edit was 2,000 words out and 2,000 back, so it was almost identical word count to when I started. But I had a writing buddy. Avon Shortkind is another narrator who I'm friends with, and she's the one that convinced me to do it again. She's like, you should write another book again, and she said, and I'll write one with you. And so she fell on her sword and wrote a book to get me to write a book. So I'm eternally grateful for this. And then when we wrote again together. So we're like writing buddies now. So the second book I also wrote with Avon, and she wrote a book more seriously for herself the second time, which is great. It's called The Truth Seer and the Goose. It's really rad. Um, but it actually went really smoothly, and I finished on time, and I did a chapter a day, and it was actually pretty pleasant. The second book was not.
Oh, I can
Yeah.
hear people just like freaking out with those like perfect days and perfect balances.
I mean, it still felt like
Um,
work every day, but it felt like achievable work. It was like, I've got my chapter to do, but at least I know where I'm going
mm.
and I can lunge toward this, this signpost in the fog. And when I outline, I am basically, I do it kind of like as like a really like a telling of the story. So it's not like bullet points. It's like, here is basically what happens in this chapter in plain prose English. So if you read it all together, it sounds like a story. It's just a really abbreviated one. So I
Yeah.
found that made it easier for me to write because it articulated the things that were important about the chapter to me in a way where I had to like solve all the problems while I was outlining. Um, Admittedly, there's not a lot of problems to solve in a relatively plotless book about opening a coffee shop. So, I mean, I set the bar low.
Surely there's more
Yeah.
logistics there in that. We have to think about the specifics of that then. If you're like making a coffee shop, what is coffee to these
Yeah.
people?
Yeah.
For me, a lot of the things
What
are
is
like, how is
coffee?
this character changed by this chapter? Like, what's different between
Yeah.
these two people by the end? And what's the scene in the middle that makes that happen? What's the conversation they have or the action they take that drives that? And so finding that in the outline always helped me a ton.
I have had success with outlines. Usually what I do is I let myself discovery write for like 20 to 30,000 words. Like the first act, I just write whatever I want, and then I force myself to stop and sort of identify where the plot beats are. And that's what I did with Atlas. For all three Atlas books, that's what I did. Whatever else I've written these days. But this book that I'm currently writing, I got to the 30,000 point and I was like, oh, I don't know what's happening. And I was like, I guess I'll just stop again when I figure it out. And I haven't figured it out yet. So we'll see.
I
But
admire
this
your
is
ability to do that. That's amazing.
this
It's
is a real
stressful.
vibes book. Yeah, I'm gonna find out when it's over. Like it's not I know, I trust the process. At some point I'm gonna understand what the book was about, but it seems like it's gonna be at the end. So
I mean, if it makes you all feel better, I think Cassie Clare did a very similar thing when I was talking to her last week. She writes like just a general outline that just says, A walked into a room and says B to B, and then was like, actually, I need to add more, and then really think about it. So, more sometimes helps.
there there are some authors who are really like Susan Dennard is like amazingly good about like which pieces she writes and how she puts them together, and she's just a very like methodical writer, and I'm just like, how it seems like it'd be better.
Do you write in a linear fashion? Do any of you write in a linear fashion, or do you like just pick where you're going to go and then like work around? Like, how does the process for you actually work?
What I do, I'm like, I think I've heard someone say like all narratives come from world building, character, or story. I think Olivie had said like the character built from the character came the world. Or I don't know if that was something you said just recently, but for me, it's like the world was the seed, and so I do a bit of world building and then try not to get mucked up too much into the world, which can be a trap. You'd end up, as you said, just staying in the world and creating glossaries, as Travis did for many many years. You could
I
end
want
up
to
in
know what's in that
glossaries.
glossary.
Yeah, that should be another thing you can narrate, Travis.
Oh
um,
Lord.
so yeah, so I have to break myself out of that and then try to discover where the characters fit into this world. So the combat codes, I was like, how can I create a world where there's no war and instead there's MMA fights or combat sports in the place of it? And then from the characters came from that. And I'll try to do the narrative will be fairly linear, but again, I'm very scattered brained, so I'll kind of just go. I'll be taking notes on my phone, and then they're like I'm emailing myself like in different. I have like 3 different Gmail accounts, and they'll all be like crisscrossed. It's I don't know. I wish I could do.
Having
Okay.
It's like
conversations with
water.
yourself.
I wish I could be different. I wish I could. I wish I could. I don't know. It's really
Change
great.
me, please. I wrote one book out of order. It was my first book. It was Masters of Death, and I will never do it again. I actually did consider with this book writing it out of order, and I was like, no, I will have learned one thing, and it is not to write the scenes out of order. Piecing it back together was the worst.
Oof, that sounds really hard.
Fun.
I write very linearly, obviously, because I've got it all kind of listed out. I have this engineering background, and as an engineer, what happens in software, if you write software, is if you leave bugs, and then you keep working, they start to compound and they start to hide each other, and the weird problems start to metastasize. And you can tell yourself, "Oh, I'll fix this later," but it's always a terrible idea. So I have this inbuilt need to fix shit immediately because I'm just so used to it going wrong if I don't. So as I'm writing, if I discover like a logical flaw or something that has to happen, I have to do it immediately or I freak out. So if I discover, man, this emotional beat does not land unless these two people have a conversation earlier that really gives some more context to this, I have to go do it immediately. So when I finish a chapter, and I do one chapter a day, and that's it, I do a quick edit of it afterwards to try and make sure that nothing has gone sideways. Not a cursory edit, and then I'm done. And so by the time I get to the book, theoretically, it's okay. I mean, obviously there'll be stuff to do, but I like to get to the end and be like, okay, it's okay, and then have a sigh of relief. And then immediately I
So
start
admirable
stressing
of
out
you.
once I start to reread
I'm
it.
really triggered by that.
That's incredible.
I was just trying to imagine like a world where I edited things, but then I'd forever be editing. I would never move on. Like for me, I'm the opposite. I can't touch it right away unless it's a major structural problem. I just move on from it because I will just get mired in it. Like I have to fix this, and then I'll never move forward, and then we'll be trapped.
Right.
For me, I
It's
have
the
to
same
have it as part of the process. So I have to edit it right after writing it, and it's only that limited window of time, and I'm not allowed to touch it after. Like once it's done, it's
Okay.
done. And so it's not like, oh, I can go into editing
Okay.
mode and keep going. It's like, nope, I got another chapter I got to do tomorrow, so I just need to be done. But it's just enough that it's like, okay, it's not a mess.
Okay. Yeah,
Wow.
that makes sense what you say about code. That if I go back, I just end up there, and then I wake up and I'm in a total different room, and I'm just like writing something completely like I just like if I go back, I know I'm never coming out of it.
Right, exactly. And that's where I live now with the end. It's like, it's like people, I find a lot of people tell me that they get like, they get stuck. They want to keep rewriting their opening chapter or whatever. And it's like, yeah, exactly. Don't touch that. You write it down, you put it away, and you hide it from yourself, and you don't look at it until later. Because also I find that like when you're in a different state of mind, it reads differently. So a lot of things that I imagine were really horrible are not so bad, or things that I thought were really good are not.
Yep. Yep. And to be clear, I don't let myself go back and just edit earlier chapters unless it's just to add something. Like I don't go reread that first chapter because it's a trap. It's a total trap. So when I'm doing an edit, it's really, think of it as like copy editing as opposed to line editing. I'm just trying to make sure that when I look at this again, I'm not going to be sad immediately. That like everything is spelled wrong and it's punctuated weird, and this guy's name is misspelled 4 times on the same page. That stuff is taken care of so that I can think about like something more important, like, does this emotionally land for me, or crap, do I even need this chapter?
You need to bottle that and sell that and make some money out of that, because that's like, if you could teach that to people, whoosh.
Yeah. Although part of it is the like, for me at this point, the time limits. I get like 3 hours a day to write the end. That's the only time that I have. So I can spend it tinkering, or I can spend it moving forward and just noting to myself like, this is what I have to come back to. This thing has to change. I have a long list of stuff. Like I've changed the setting of the book I'm currently working on 3 times. I changed it once, changed it back again. And like, I don't know. I'm coming back to it. At some point later, we will do the line edit. But yeah, no, would definitely, oh my God. Amazing. The thought of coming back to a draft and not feeling sad, wild.
I mean, there's total sadness, but it's just like it's like the degree of sadness, right? Because it's just it's still work.
Yes.
It's still got that work to do when you come back through. We're like, oh, here comes the edit. Wow.
Yeah. The editing fairy.
Eventually, you all got to the ends of your books and went, you know what, this is decent enough to publish. You hit that send, but obviously there's the big red button that just says publish everywhere in the world. You push that button. How did that feel the first time when you'd first published your first books? Excellent.
There's just a point. I mean, it's kind of in line with our previous conversation. There's just a point where you have to say the next thing will be better, and I'm going to move on.
Mm.
Like this thing, it's never going to be perfect, but it's done, and so
You-
the next thing will be the new thing, and the next thing will be the better thing.
And there's definitely
Yeah,
trepidation. I kind of got used to making games of getting up every day and saying to myself, somebody out there hates what I just did because I'm absolutely going to hear that. So I might as well just get it out of the way. And then it's not a surprise. But there's
Mhm.
still like the trepidation of like, I'm gonna put it out there. And I found moving from like software, which is more impersonal, and audiobooks, which are somebody else's book that I'm just putting like, a little icing on, books feel more personal to me. So it feels more personally exposed than anything else I've ever done. So there was definitely more like, you're looking at me, not something I did. You're looking at me. But I, I I think I just had a fortunate first experience where it went well, and I didn't immediately get crapped on. I mean, there's totally people that don't like the book, but I had a good response, so I I I probably have no perspective. I'll wait for the second book when people decide that it doesn't have coffee and now it fucking sucks. I'm sorry, pardon my
Yeah.
language.
it has bookshops, Travis.
There's no coffee. I'll just
Love,
throw it
no
away.
love.
Be gone.
I don't drink coffee anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah, I didn't really, I wasn't worried when I first published because I don't know, I didn't think anyone was going to read it. It wasn't until it got into SPFBO, into like the finals, and it started getting judged a lot that I started getting really a little
That's
bit more
intense.
stressed. And
People go really hard on that.
right, they do, and it created this whole debate about like whether it was science fiction or fantasy, and it's like neither. It's just like science fantasy, and there were like judges that were very well intentioned, but they would be like, I really love the book, but it's not fantasy. 3 out of 10. And but it was like whatever, it is what it is. But I think that kind of was the after that when I did recently, traditionally published, it was like I can handle anything, just like dang it.
Yeah, I had the benefit of like no one is meaner than a fanfic reviewer. Like on the thing that you've written for free for fun. Like no one is ever going to be more hurtful than someone who's telling you how worthless you are on fanfiction.net. And so like I started writing fanfiction because I had I have a mental illness and I couldn't sleep, and I started writing fanfic because I was like, this is something I can do, and chose some random name, Olivie Blake, to write under, and started posting. And the very first thing that happened was someone left a super negative review. Very first comment. But I think instead of feeling like discouraged by it, I was kind of amazed that it was like, oh, someone actually read this. And then I started to see like, people would show up and people would come back, and it felt like this very living, breathing thing. And that was what was so fun about fan fiction as a medium, was that, it keeps trying to switch to my phone for some reason, which is sitting over here behaving itself. But yeah, but definitely all the like the negativity, I was very accustomed to it. So by the time I got my first like truly heinously negative review on Masters of Death, my first book, it was kind of like, well, I've heard this before. It's not for everyone. So that by the time people were like, Olivie Blake is overrated, the Atlas Six is pure aestheticism or something, it was just kind of like, you know what, you can't hurt me. I've been like, so many people have been meaner to me. I have been meaner to me. Like, this is just what it is. This is what comes of being an artist. But it definitely is crazy. It's just like, oh, like I have ceased to be a human person. Like all of my thoughts and my feelings and my beliefs are on the page, and then the audience can like reject that, or call it meaningless, or call it pretentious.
I
And
mean, people are
it's
now
a
offering
really
kidneys for this
interesting.
book, so look at the circles.
Thank you for the kidneys. Yeah, no, but
Mhm.
it is that is the thing about art, isn't it? That like if somebody doesn't like it, like like if there isn't like variation of taste, then was it really art?
Mm. My
These are
original
the
pitch for
questions
this
I
talk
ask myself.
My original pitch for this talk was that we would just find all those mean comments, read them out, and discuss them as free therapy and joke about them. But I know that's like the after hours talk. We'll film that next week and come back to this. It'll be a regular series.
I could probably I don't read my reviews because I could probably recite for you right now every mean thing I've ever read. Like they're just living there. Love it.
Red Ray, it's fine. Obviously you went from indie to trad. So we're going to very quickly touch on that and just how was your experience going into revisiting a book and then having it out on a slightly different scale into the world? Who's just the most unhinged journey? Let's start with Alex. What was your experience like going from?
Come on.
It's
No,
true. It's fine.
my journey was definitely unhinged, which is why it's hard to give. I mean, I'm not trying to give advice ever now because I'm just like I don't know if it's reproducible. Um, but as far as I've really enjoyed it. I feel like maybe just the nature of the way publishing works, but the self pub I felt a bit more disconnected. Felt more solitary. I mean, like writing is very solitary no matter what, but it felt a bit more solitary. Like we did form like some author bonds, which was really cool. And I was when you're self pub, you contract artists and editors, and that's a certain type of relationship. But with traditional, I really felt more of a collaborative effort, like especially working with editors, and there's so many hands that are touching your book when you're going through like your manuscript, and then you're going through first pass and second pass. You're just like seeing the names in the edits, and it's really cool. Like you see the same names repeated over and over, and you even though you're not like this is kind of weird. I feel like I'm almost doing I like have this little conversation with like the copy editors where I'm like, they say something, if they find something really good, which they're always finding that, mistakes I've made, that then I'm like writing little like, yes, thank you. Like, and it just feels a little more collaborative. I think I would really love working in a writer's room. That seems like a really cool concept to me. So again, with
Wow.
traditional, I feel like that was the added benefit of it.
Amazing. Writers' room to say. Travis.
My experience has been really good. I think my
Yours has
experience has
been
been
quick as
really
well. Like it was
abnormal.
Yeah, that's
My
super
experience has been very
fast.
abnormal, so I don't. It feels weird to talk about it because it doesn't feel like it's going to apply in a lot of cases because it's just so strange. So I did really well in self-pub, and I also weirdly did really well in print in self-pub because I think I got it in like every Barnes and Noble. I think I had like so normally like when you do self-pub, it's like maybe 1% of your ebook sales are like paperback copies. I asked all my author friends about this. Mine were roughly half, so it was roughly 1-to-1 between ebooks and paperbacks. Um, and so it like did really well, and largely due to other people boosting it, and social media, book talk, booktube, et cetera, et cetera. But I could have just kept doing that. Um, and also, I'm in a weird position where I wasn't trying to switch jobs. Like, I like narrating books, it's cool. So I didn't feel like I had to do anything. Um, I did a really rigorous edit beforehand. So when it switched to Tor, basically nothing's changed. We did another copy edit, and I asked to change a handful of words, and we changed some stuff to be their house style. And I believe we changed the way that so I'm from the South, so I say you drug something as opposed to dragged something, but people don't like that. So that's the kind
Two
of like level of
meanings.
editorial change we did. And then it was a really short timeline to flip it over. Um, I really liked working with everybody in TradPub. I've had a really good experience. And there is definitely more reach to it. I get in airports where I couldn't have before, probably. And you get nominated for awards that there's no way you would get nominated for otherwise. I don't think there's probably a lot of self-pub Hugo nominations going on. Um, and so there's lots of really cool stuff that comes along with that. And it is nice to be um to have translations. This is another kind of like big switch from indie to trad is foreign rights. Because I was never going to get a foreign rights agent and get the book translated into like I don't know how many languages now, like a bunch. And they just keep coming in, and it's like, well, this is super cool, and I would never have ever done this. And that's like a reach that there's no other way that you're going to get. So all that is super amazing. And I had a lot of trepidation going into it because I was worried about having to tear everything apart and start over because I liked it having it done. I didn't want to like gut the book and remake it. And then it wasn't like that at all. Um, it felt really collaborative. It was never a my way or the highway thing. It was always like, hey, we have this idea. Largely talking about the second book, because that's where we went through a more normal editorial process, although still not normal. I did it weird then too, because I used my same indie editor before giving them my final draft. So it was like when I turned it in, I turned in like a done book, and then we did our editorial turnaround in like 2 weeks, and then it was done. So it was just again really really weird. But again, they were open to that. They were fine. And so have nothing but good things to say about everybody that I've worked with at Tor. I was like, also just having Tor on on the side of the book is just like amazingly cool.
It's like a dream, yeah.
It
My
really is.
experience was very different because I didn't do any of the things you're supposed to do when you self-publish. I didn't hire an editor, I didn't hire an interior designer or a cover designer. I did everything myself, except for the editing. I had friends edit. It was almost like I basically treated my self-published works exactly the same as I had treated my fan fiction. Like friends read it. They kind of helped me with the proofreading and stuff. I learned as I went with the interior stuff. The Atlas 6 was my ninth self-published book. And even then it wasn't like exactly right. Like in terms of, I didn't think it was something that was going to end up in Barnes and Noble. To that, I have to say that Barnes and Noble like structurally changing so that individual booksellers could decide what was in store was like a great thing for indie authors specifically. And it was definitely a great thing for me because honestly, my stuff didn't have any business being in Barnes and Noble. So when I went in, like part of what I wanted to do was like, yeah, let's do some edits. There's stuff I want to change. The Atlas 6 was going to be, it was always supposed to be a trilogy. I didn't want to handle production. I didn't want to have to keep track of foreign rights because people were starting to approach me about translations. I didn't want to do that myself. You can do it yourself, but I didn't want to. And I didn't want to do an audiobook. I didn't want to produce an audiobook. But people wanted it. And I wasn't even an even split. The very majority of my sales were the paperback. But part of that was because my books always had art in them. So they, went viral on very visual mediums. And it was always really exciting to see the art. And it was it's one of the things I'm really excited about, the fact that I always worked with my illustrator, Lokmura, because like, to me, she's part of what made this. And so it was really cool. It was definitely very cool to kind of come into Tor with a little bit more power than the average debut author, because it's like, I don't need this technically. As much as I dreamed about having the Tor logo on the spine, and I didn't want to do the production stuff, and self-publishing is kind of like being your own business, and I didn't really want to do that part of writing. I just wanted to do the writing. Since it was kind of like, this isn't necessarily, I don't need to traditionally publish. I am doing fine with self-publishing. It was nice to be able to say, no, we're going to have illustrations. We're going to keep the hardcover to a certain price point. I want to do these sort of edits. So I actually didn't work with anyone so for the Atlas 6 had structural edits because it's a trilogy, so I wanted to build on the content. And then One for My Enemy and Masters of Death, I think Tor would have happily just republished as they were with copy edits, but I really wanted to change them. They were like a couple years old by then, and I wanted to make them better, make them richer and more emotional and all that stuff. And I did that on my own. So actually, I guess it was I think what felt different to me was actually the presence of the Tor logo. It was like, now the work has to be as good as the logo on the spine. But yeah, it was, for me, definitely a really fun and crazy amount of work project to kind of fit into a truncated production schedule, all these edits that I wanted to do that no one was asking me to do. So it was sort of, yeah. And like my illustrator doing new illustrations also on this same like insane production schedule. I've gone totally off topic, but yeah, I'm just really proud of these new re-releases because they're kind of like the icing, they're not the things that went viral. It was just like publishing was like, you seem like you could make us some money. And I was like, great, I will take advantage of this to put out like the very best version of a product that I always wanted to have out in the world. So definitely a dream. But also, you're correct. Hard to replicate. I don't know. I don't like any of our journeys. I don't think that you could just follow it. Like there's no step-by-step guide here. There's nothing. There's nothing you can take from it except to like really believe in what you created.
It's hard. Like for me, I got film representation before I got literary representation, which is like, that's not something you normally do. Olivie, I thought you were gonna do your publishing monster voice. I heard so often with did you do it with
I held
Tendai?
it back.
I was
waiting for it.
I did the publishing monster, and like I can't do the publishing monster every time, you know. Like we got to rein it in.
Yeah,
so.
I understand.
It's like an in-person thing. You have to see it in person and feel it like in the room.
It's true. Yeah, you do. You have to be in the room. It's my performance art.
Which we can't mock you for because it's your art and not anybody else's. I think the moral of all of these stories is chaos is going to happen. Embrace the chaos, enjoy the chaos, and just have a really great fun time with the process. You have no idea what's going to happen or where you're going to go, which also means we have run out of time, which is highly sad because I had so many more things to ask and say. But thank you all so much for joining me for this. Thank you to everyone that has been watching, whether you are watching internationally around the world via the stream or you're watching in person and I'm standing behind you, watching you, watching me, watching you. That sort of made sense. And thank you all so much. Make sure you check out all the other streams and the rest of the festival and check out all these amazing authors online. Go and buy all of their books, buy extra books for your friends and family. And thank you all so much. And we will see you all again very soon. So from all of us, thank you and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.